Jnana-timanandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshur-unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri-Gurave Namaha. Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Deshatarine Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi together one more time. Hare Hare
Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Caitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sarpadantiko Vanchakalpachubhyascha Kripa Sandubhayuvacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavena Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Come on, where's your bear suit?
Not here.
That'd be so good, yeah, if we all wore bear suits like Sahasras. Yes, it would be a real cult. You okay today? Come on. So, Sasra, you okay? Sasra Prabhu, you okay? You okay? Raise your hand if you're not okay. No one would dare. Oh, okay. Why? What's wrong?
Got a sore back.
Oh, really? Back to Godhead. But that's our problem, that we put our back to Godhead. We should actually face Krishna. You got kicked back for the kick that we gave. We get kicked back, that's the problem. Maybe it's a little too loud, I would say. Hare Krishna. It's nice to be back with you all again. And we're reading from the 6th chapter, which is the final chapter in this first volume of Caitanya Caritamrta, the 6th chapter of Madhya Lila. So, what's happened just recently in the 6th chapter is Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has arrived in Puri. He's gained the association, that he's placed himself in a position where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya would take care of him. And by taking care of him, our relationship is established by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's taking care of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has seen the ecstasy of Mahaprabhu, the extreme internal mood of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And this extreme internal mood of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, just by his seeing Lord Jagannath, it has placed him in very deep separation from Krishna, a complete internal mood of separation from Krishna. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had never seen anything like that before, but he couldn't understand the actual position of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's position is very difficult to understand because he's Krishna who has come in the mood of Srimati Radharani, mostly in the mood of Srimati Radharani, but he's Krishna and he's in the mood of a devotee of Krishna. So very difficult to understand this, but one can understand it when one gets some mercy from Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, or one of the devotees, exalted devotees of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wasn't ready for that, because he was the he was the topmost scholar in all of Jagannath Puri, and what had that granted him? That it granted him so much respect, so much power, and he had a philosophy that was Advaitavad. Advaitavad means that, what does Advaitavad mean? Raise your hand. Yes. Oh.
Not two, one.
Not two, but one. So, and what else? Who could explain a little more detail?
That Brahman is the ultimate reality.
That Brahman is the ultimate reality.
Energies.
Yeah, and what else? Yes?
Him and me, we are the same.
Who's the him in this?
Karma.
Wait, I didn't ask you. I mean the Brahman. But you can't say Brahman is him because he's qualityless. And if one,
The living entity is simultaneously one and different to the absolute truth.
that's our philosophy, but that's not the philosophy of the Mayavadis. But there's only a oneness of everything. Everything is one, this qualityless, impersonal, because if it has no qualities, it doesn't have personality. It's just a oneness of energy. And everything is that, and you are also that. That's Tattvamasi. But that's so contrary to what we see. Do we see a oneness, a qualitylessness blur when we look out at the world? No. And do we see ourselves the same as everyone else? No. So what is the Advaitavad impersonalist explanation for their definition of reality being oneness and completely contrary to their to experience? So what's their explanation? What's their explanation? Yes?
If God has a form, then he's limited.
Yes. That's one of the concepts, that form would limit him. But what's their explanation for their idea of reality being oneness of everything, with no qualities? That means there's no qualities. I mean, we can't even conceive of what that means even. But it has no qualities, but what's the difference? How do they explain the difference between their idea of reality and what everyone perceives when you open your eyes? Everyone close your eyes. Okay, then. No snoring, please. And now open your eyes. Oh, you're only looking at me. But do you see formlessness when you open your eyes, or do you see? Or what do you see? You see so much variety. You can look at the ceiling. You can see cobwebs. Unfortunately, you can and what to speak of looking over there and seeing them. And you can see the carpet, which has ribs, and you can see so many different colors. You see so many different individuals. You can't see the air, but it has the quality of, you can feel that the air is there even though you can't see it. There's so many different elements that we perceive. So how do they explain the existence of those differences when they say that their philosophy says that there are no differences at all? Everything is nirgun, without qualities.
Illusion.
It's illusion. It's not really real. It's really not there. So that's a very peculiar philosophy when you have to say that everything that you see isn't really there. And it's just an illusion. It's a fabrication. caused by Maya. But when we speak about it, we can make fun of it and say how silly it is and ridiculous it is. But they have so much logic and very, very tricky, what Prabhupada would call word jugglery, confirmed. They have so many different ways to explain it, but it's mental speculation. It only exists on the mental platform. It doesn't. Its existence doesn't have anything to do with reality. It just has to do with the mental platform, word jugglery, speculation. So in their minds, that's why Lord Brahma says, "Vamukti maninas." They can see their liberation is only in their mind, because their whole concept of reality is only in their mind, because it doesn't at all conform to either logic or perception. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was philosophically an Advaitavadi, a Mayavadi. So he couldn't comprehend Mahaprabhu's position, but Mahaprabhu was quite determined to give him mercy, and that mercy meant a cure of this illusory Mayavad philosophy and establish him in relationship to Krishna, as a person in relationship to Krishna, because in Vaishnava philosophy, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, according to the Bhagavad Gita, that everything in existence has a relationship to the Absolute Truth, to Krishna. That this is the definition of the Absolute Truth, that it's all inclusive. Do they talk like this in school? About philosophy and things like that? Not at all? Little? Or not?
No.
How about in your classes? Do they talk about philosophy and things like this? No. Do they talk about there's a purpose in life? Do they talk about that, just to find the purpose of life, and the difference between human life and animal life? Do they speak about that? What do they say?
That humans are different from animals.
Yes, and what's the difference?
Humans are smarter.
Good point. At least they could say some humans are smarter. No? Humans, but do they teach you that humans are more intelligent than animals?
Not really.
Not really, but you figured that one out yourself. Good. Do you know what Prabhupada would say to that? Do you know? Does anyone know what Prabhupada would say? Yes.
Two-legged animal?
Yes, he would say two-legged animals, but why? Because if an animal eats, sleeps, mates, defends. And if a human being uses his intelligence to only engage in eating, sleeping, and mating and defending, then practically speaking, there's no difference between him and an animal. So then he would say two-legged animals, etc., etc. He would criticize. There's one, you can hear Mr. Seti even speak about it on YouTube even, where there's this very powerful person who's now passed away who was really devoted to Prabhupada. And he was a very strong person. He was a construction, he had his own construction company or something like that. And but he was a big person, and he had a very much a Kshatriya warrior nature, and people tended to be frightened of him. And when he first met Prabhupada, he was talking and he asked what Prabhupada asked him what his day was like, what he did. So he was saying he goes to work, he does this, he goes this, he eats, then he goes to sleep. And Prabhupada, who was not very, very tall in stature, he said to him, "Mr. Seti, what is the difference between you and a pig?" Can you imagine? But then Prabhupada would smile, you know. First, they would, if you had feathers, they would certainly get ruffled. But there wasn't any envy on the part of Prabhupada. So people generally they laughed also because Prabhupada just laughed. But Prabhupada actually said that. So that's even more direct than a two-legged animal. It's a four-legged, two-legged. Yeah. What's the difference between human beings? He said this in Melbourne, and I think even and people in cars, that human beings, animals run on four legs, and human beings run on four wheels. But human life has a purpose, and the great intelligence that you possess shouldn't be used in an animalistic way. Otherwise, what would be the difference between you and a... Well, I didn't say it. She said it. She said, what would be the difference between you and a... Oh, no, you said it yourself. You know what pig spelled backwards is? No.
Banana.
Yeah, it's gip. What would be the difference between you and a gip spelled backwards? Yes. So we want to be very careful. And I mean, now I'm teasing over here, but there's such a tendency in the world of Maya, in the world of illusion. It's so appealing. It's so Maya casts its magical spell that hypnotizes us to forget that life has a purpose. And we could go on forgetting that life has its purpose till the day that we die, practically speaking. We can be so well hypnotized. And this is what, and we'll still be longing for the next model of this, and if we get the next one of those, then we'll be happy, then this and then that. To the day we die, and we don't want that to happen. It would be such a waste of life. So much of the preaching of Prabhupada was just on this one point, that we should use our lives responsibly. Our human life is a gift. It's not like we chose. We can choose what family we're going to be born in. It's not that we can choose what country we're going to be born in. It's not that we can choose our life. It's a gift. It's a gift, and this intelligence that a human being has, it's a gift. It has the ability to ask questions, introspective questions. It's why am I here? Why am I suffering? How did I get into this situation? This bubble of consciousness that I identify with as myself. How did this happen? How did I get here? And then, where am I going? And what determines where I'm going? If I don't know how I got here, and suddenly I sort of just pop into existence, you become conscious of yourself at a certain point. When the consciousness, the body and consciousness are developed enough, you become conscious that I'm here. But how did I get here? And where did I get here from? And then the next question is, where am I going? And what happens to me next? So, the philosophy that everything is one, and you're illusion, and nothing really matters in one sense either. I once met a very wealthy young man many, many years ago now. He's quite dead. But what is quite? When I say quite dead, what do I?
Long time ago.
What does quite dead mean? Why is it a little funny? Yes, everyone has a terminal illness, yes. But quite dead because, why is it funny?
You mean he and his philosophy are both dead?
That's even deeper than I was thinking. I was just thinking that quite dead means he is dead, because you're either dead or you're not dead. Yes. So he's dead. I mean, he was quite dead. So one time he was thinking himself very clever, and we were outside his office, his family's office, and he was smoking a cigarette, and I because he was even young. I said, you know why you're doing that? It's so bad for you. And he said, I'm not smoking. My body is smoking. So that's misuse of, it's all illusion. It's not me. It's my body. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wasn't on that level, but he was philosophically completely a follower of Sripad Shankaracharya and the Vedanta philosophy. So when he saw Mahaprabhu in this deep ecstasy, he couldn't understand who he was, Radha Krishna Nahayanya, that Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna, that he couldn't understand that. So, but he was certainly very struck by Mahaprabhu and his personal presence. He was so powerful. And he was in this deep ecstasy that no one can understand. And he was beautiful. And he was effulgent. So, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had affection for him, and especially when they found out that that Mahaprabhu was from Nadia and that there was some relationship with Mahaprabhu's grandparents and his own father, that they knew each other. So, so after Mahaprabhu came out of his ecstatic trance by the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu and Damodar Pandit and the other devotees, Gadadhar Pandit and Jagannatha Pandit rather, and Mukunda Datta, then there was a discussion between Gopinathacharya, who was the brother, his wife, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's wife's youngest sister's husband. So what would that be in Hindi? There must be some name for it.
Sadhu.
Huh?
Sadhu.
Satu?
Sadhu.
Satu.
It is spelled as Sadhu, but it is pronounced as more. It is more dominant.
Okay.
Sadhu.
Satu. His wife's sister's husband. Satu. So, so the Gopinathacharya was a devotee, and he knew Mahaprabhu's position. So an argument took place between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his followers and Gopinathacharya, and Gopinathacharya was explaining that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are so fortunate, and you don't recognize him. So they're discussing back and forth, and the followers of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, you may feel he's the Supreme Lord, you may think so, but we don't accept just what people think. Where's the Shastra to prove it? So Gopinathacharya quoted some Shastra about Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu's teachings of Sankirtan, and quoting Suvarna Varna Hemango Varangas Chandana Gadi from the Mahabharata, saying Mahaprabhu. And then Gopinathacharya then said, there is no need to quote so much evidence from the Shastras, for you are a very dry speculator. There is no need to sow seeds in a barren land. So what does that mean? There's no need to sow seeds. You know what sow means in that sense?
Plant.
Yes, exactly. So there's no need to plant seed in a barren land. Why?
Because they won't grow.
Because what's the use? You're just wasting your seeds, you're wasting your time. They won't grow if the land has no fertility. But how could Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who's in this situation of being in the association of Mahaprabhu, but being in the consciousness of a Mayavadi, how could he ever understand? Because Shastra is not going to convince him. So Gopinathacharya said, when the Lord will be pleased with you, Tanre Krip then you will understand that these conclusions, and then you will quote Shastra. You will be the one who quotes Shastra. So ultimately, the ingredient that is truly needed is some mercy. That mercy, when the Lord will be pleased with you, and that mercy will come either through the Lord or His devotees. The false arguments and philosophical word jugglery of your disciples is not a fault of theirs. They have simply received the benediction of Mayavad philosophy. I offer my respectful obeisances. This is a quotation from the 6th canto. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of unlimited qualities and whose different potencies bring about agreement and disagreement between disputants. Thus, the illusory energy again and again covers the self-realization of both disputants. So people are fighting philosophically what's correct in the universities. One sees this continuously because every philosopher has to have a different point of view, otherwise they're not respected. So where do these points of view come from? This is also described in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. This is Krishna giving a particular perspective or revealing some aspect of but not the whole absolute truth, to a certain person according to that person's desire. And then that person understanding one part, because say the absolute truth is, if you think of it like not like a circle, but a sphere, a ball. So how many points are there on a sphere? How many points are there?
Unlimited.
Unlimited. So we're like one point, because we're little jiva souls, we're one point on a sphere. What's another name for a sphere?
Ball.
Who said that?
I didn't.
I didn't think you did. What's another word for a sphere?
Ball.
Very good, very good. Not like some people who just call out. A ball. So how many points, how many, what's the right word? You can call out now.
Point.
How many points are there on a ball?
Unlimited.
Unlimited, very good. You're getting an A+ in this class.
Dots.
You are okay with unlimited. You can stop there now. Okay. So we see from one point, and we think that's true because I see it. I really see it in that way. But we're missing all the rest of the unlimited points, their point of view, and only Krishna sees from every point of view. Because he knows everything. He's everywhere at all times, and yet he's a person. So he sees from all points of view, so he can know everything. So everyone else thinks, and this is true in all cases, not only with Mayavad philosophies, but each and every one of us, we tend to think that I see things accurately and no one else does. And if they can understand what I understand, then they would immediately agree with me because I understand things correctly. Do you ever think like that, Sonu?
Can you repeat the question again?
No. Does anyone ever think like that?
Yes.
It's so hard. I get it wrong. Why the speaker get the answer? Continuing. In almost all cases, whatever learned Brahmins speak becomes accepted. Nothing is impossible for one who takes shelter of my illusory energy and speaks under her influence. This is the quotation that I was referring to from the 11th canto. That you can justify any philosophy. Someone will, and if you speak strongly, any philosophy, ridiculous as it may be, if you speak strongly with full conviction, you will get followers. Because people are usually quite mental about their beliefs, but if you're strong, this is the way things are, you'll get followers. So here's Prabhupada's purport here. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, the verse explaining that everyone has their point of view and it's influenced by Krishna's illusory energy. What I mean by that is that the point that you're seeing it from, you become convinced that it is, you're seeing everything in the full reality of everything. I'm going to ask you a question soon, so you better listen. In this verse, and don't say what's the question, okay? or even any form of that. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, what book?
In this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Not only did you give me the book, but you gave me the beginning of the sentence too. The Supreme Personality of Godhead explains that his illusory energy can perform the impossible. Such is the power of the illusory energy. In many cases, philosophical speculations have covered the real truth and have boldly set forth false theories. In ancient times, philosophers like Kapila, Gautama, Jaimini, Kanada, and similar brahmanas propounded useless philosophical theories. And in modern days, so-called scientists are setting forth many false theories about the creation, backed up by seemingly logical arguments. This is all due to the influence of the Supreme Lord's illusory energy. The illusory energy, therefore, sometimes appears very bewildered. The illusory energy, therefore, sometimes appears correct because, what did I just say?
The illusory energy sometimes appears correct because...
Just see what you could do if you paid attention. You'd probably memorize the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya Caritamrta, the Bhagavad Gita. What did I just say?
Memorize the Srimad Bhagavatam Caritamrta and something else I didn't get it. Oh, Gita.
Yeah. See, the way you said it, I said that if you would pay attention, you'd be able to memorize those things. But you took it as an order that you should memorize all those things. So you should do it. You start with the Bhagavad Gita. Have you memorized it yet?
A couple of verses, I
Okay,
think.
a couple means 2?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to hear them now, but next week 4.
Okay.
Why don't you memorize 2 more? And you know what's going to happen the next week? 8. And you know what's going to happen the week after that?
16.
You all know. He was afraid. Because then we're going to keep doubling it. And soon you know the entire Bhagavad Gita. And after, yeah. Great plan, yeah?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay. But anyway, see if you can know 4 by next week.
Okay.
I think you can do it. If you fix your mind on it, you'll certainly do it. Could you remind me to remind you to say them though? Because I'll forget.
Okay.
Thank you. So Prabhupada is so strong because what Prabhupada is talking about, we're calling useless philosophical theories, the Saddarshan, the most famous philosophical points of view of Indian philosophy. And he's saying useless theories about the creation backed up by seemingly logical arguments. And the ability to do this is all due to the influence of the Lord's illusory energy. The illusory energy, therefore, sometimes appears correct because it is emanating from the Supreme Correct. So they're getting one aspect of truth, but it's not truly true. It's partially true. And to accept something that's partially true as reality is illusion. To avoid the very bewildering illusory influence, one must accept the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as they are. Only then can one escape the influence of the illusory energy. So after hearing this, so Gopinath Acharya being
Sadhu.
But was he the sadhu? He was the
Both are
sadhu.
sadhu to each other.
Okay. In this case, both were sadhus also. But Gopinathacharya was younger than him. He was junior to him. But because they had an intimate relationship, they could joke in this way. And he spoke very strongly to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya didn't get insulted because of the intimacy of their relationship. And after hearing this from Gopinathacharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, first go to the place where Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is staying and invite him here with his associates. Ask him on my account. Say that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has invited you. Take Jagannath Prasadam and first give it to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. After that, come back here and teach me well. He was being sarcastic. Then you come back and you can tell me everything, all the philosophy. But first you give them Jagannath Mahaprasadam and then invite him to come. Gopinathacharya was the brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Bhaganipati. And therefore the relationship was very sweet and intimate. Under the circumstances, Gopinathacharya taught him by sometimes blaspheming him, criticizing him, sometimes praising him, and sometimes laughing at him. This had been going on for some time. See, unless the relationship is right, if you criticize someone, praise them in a, oh, you're so wonderful, and laugh at them, it won't have a very good, it won't help your relationship. But if it's already very intimate and trusting, then that even such activities won't get in the way of the relationship. And interestingly enough, with Krishna, when the relationship is very, very intimate with Krishna, then one could even... Now, what's the difference between a person your age and an adult? I'll tell you one difference. Because you were just like, your mind was like distracted, right? So you were just throwing something on your leg, right? And, okay, because your mind got distracted. But when you're younger, if your mind gets distracted, you just do something like that, you know. And especially with young kids, you know, sometimes they'll be sitting in class and they'll start going like this and like this. Because, have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that? Because they haven't learned yet to be hypocrites. Because adults, they learn how to make believe they're listening. But their mind's going all over the universe, going like this and like this or like this or like this. Because they've mastered the art of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy means that you, outside you're one thing and inside another. So one of the benefits of being young is you haven't learned how to be. So please don't be a hypocrite. Okay? Did I just tease you also?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I also teased myself. So because of the relationship, there was no problem, even though he would criticize him. Srila Mukunda Datta felt very unsatisfied. He was with Gopinathacharya at that time. He felt very satisfied to hear the conclusive statements of Gopinathacharya, but he became very, very unhappy and angry to hear the statements put forward by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he actually became angry. Did we speak about this last time? About the anger? Maybe not. He became angry. So when you're talking philosophy, you're not supposed to become angry, but this is personalism. And we saw this with Prabhupada, that sometimes when someone would put forward a Mayavad philosophy, he would become actually angry, and he would become very angry. So is this legitimate? Is it okay? I even saw Prabhupada, and I reached a conclusion on this one time. I won't tell the whole story. It's such an amazing story. In Kobe, Japan, Prabhupada, there was a large hall. I can't remember how big it is. I think I imagine probably it's bigger than it was. It was at least one football field in size, and it was filled with people. I think I'm imagining that. But it was a hall that was quite big, much bigger than many times this room, and there were maybe 200, 250 Indian families in there in Kobe, because Kobe is a mercantile city. It's a port city in Japan. And there were many textile merchants there. So they had a program in this Hindu hall, and Prabhupada spoke first, and there was maybe 8 or 10 of his disciples were there. And then at the same program, they had asked a Mayavadi sannyasi to speak. So that was, the scene is set for something very interesting. So after Prabhupada spoke in English and the Mayavadis spoke in Hindi, and in the middle of the Mayavadis class, Prabhupada looked at us and said, "Stop him." And we didn't know what to do, because I don't know, how were we going to stop him? Go up and he said, "Start kirtan." So we started kirtan. What amazing! I mean, so disrespectful. The people who weren't philosophically inclined, like all the people who were there, what in the world would they think of this? Then in the middle of the lecture, someone else's lecture, maybe you disagree with him, that's how they think, but still he has the right to speak. And Prabhupada had us start kirtan, and the Mayavadi sannyasi stopped when we started kirtan. He didn't have any choice, practically. And then later we asked Prabhupada why he did that. I asked him myself, because the Mayavadi was speaking in Hindi and we couldn't understand, and he had spoken for a half hour first, and Prabhupada just listened, and then it just suddenly he said, "Stop him." So then he started explaining that he was preaching all right. He said that. So it wasn't a fanatical thing that we don't let anyone else speak, but he was speaking all right, Prabhupada said. And then Prabhupada said, he started explaining Panchupasana, the 5 different gradations of demigod worship. And then when he said, this is what Prabhupada said, beyond all these different forms is the formless. And Prabhupada said, when he said that, I could not tolerate it. And it was really from his, he just couldn't tolerate it. It's like someone, Siddhanta Virudyappa, would not tolerate it, because it's like someone criticizing with saying bad things about someone you love. It was a lover's response. It wasn't a philosophical response. So that's the nature of these great souls. They have such an intimate personal relationship with Krishna. They respond in that way as a lover responds when it's his beloved. It's painful when someone you love is criticized. It's painful, intolerable. So similarly, Prabhupada responded in that way, and Mukunda Datta, being a lover of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, loving Mahaprabhu, knowing him, he got angry. How could he speak like this? So then, according to the instructions of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Gopinath Acharya went to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and invited him on the Bhattacharya's behalf. The Bhattacharya's statements were discussed before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they brought out, right out to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu what Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had said. Before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gopinath Acharya and Mukunda Dasa disapproved of the Bhattacharya's statements because they caused mental pain. Same point, because it wasn't just philosophy for them. It wasn't something just in the head, something philosophical, some ideas. They loved Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Do not speak like that. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has shown great affection and mercy towards me. Out of paternal affection for me, he wants to protect me and see that I follow the regulative principles of a sannyasi." What had sparked this discussion about Mahaprabhu's position was when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked what sampradaya he had taken. Mahaprabhu had taken sannyasa, and it was the Bharati sampradaya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya he wanted to reinitiate him and place him in a higher sampradaya. And Gopinath Acharya said, "You want to place him in a higher sampradaya? You don't know who he is. He's the Supreme Lord. How can you put him in a higher sampradaya?" And that's what started the discussion. So when they started criticizing Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's words, Mahaprabhu said, no. Out of his affection for me, he's just trying to act for my welfare and protect me. What fault is there in this? And then the next morning, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya together visited the temple of Lord Jagannath. Both of them were in a very pleasant mood. When they entered the temple, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya offered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a seat, while he himself sat on the floor out of due respect for a sannyasi. He then began to instruct Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on Vedanta philosophy, and out of affection and devotion he spoke to the Lord as follows. So we won't go further into his explanation of Vedanta, which is going to be the Vedanta philosophy of Sripad Shankaracharya. Do you know the name of his commentary on Vedanta? No.
Shankara Bhashya.
No.
Vedanta Sutra.
Sariraka Bhashya. That's Shankaracharya. Of course, you know these things. Sariraka Bhashya, which is interesting because right in the beginning of it, Shankaracharya says, "I'm going to explain Vedanta according to my philosophy." As opposed to when you write a commentary on something, you want to comment on show how it's about the Shastra. You're supposed to show what the real meaning of the Shastra is. But he didn't say that. He said, "I'm going to explain Vedanta according to my philosophy," which Sripad Ramanujacharya called Chana Bhavad, means covered Buddhism. Okay, we shall end here and ask
Sorry,
if...
did you say covered? Oh,
Covered. Covered. Meaning it's Buddhist philosophy covered with Vedic terms.
I have a question, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
What you were saying about illusion, so are we talking about material nature and this illusion being the same as the material nature, or are we talking about this illusion being also part of nature?
Well, see, Maya has two parts. Maya or illusion has two parts. Technically they're called Upadan Karan, no? Yeah, Upadan, yeah. There's two parts of Maya. One is the objects of Maya which are produced, Upadan, they're produced by the material energy. So that's one part, the physical objects. including earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc., mind, intelligence. So that's one part. And there's another part called Gunamayi, which means goodness, passion, ignorance, which move the other parts around. So Maya has two parts.
But it's still the same, like illusion.
Well, it causes illusion. Because for someone who sees everything in perspective, one will see Maya as a servant of Krishna and seeing the gross material elements as in relationship to Krishna. They come from Krishna. This is described in the third canto of the Bhagavatam. And see the three modes of material nature as like the keepers of the prison. So the keepers of the prison, from the point of view of a prisoner, they see the keepers of the prison in one way, but from the point of view of the government, they see the keeper of the prison in a different way. They're doing government service. So, yes. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? How many nails do you have?
10.
How many does a carpenter have? Huh?
I didn't get the question.
How many nails does a carpenter have?
Carpenter.
A carpenter. You know? Bang, 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 bang.
Oh, 10.
Okay. That's before he goes to Bunnings. Yes.
I find it quite interesting that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has so much faith in Jagannath, in spite of his philosophy. He goes to the temple and he says, go and distribute prasad to Prabhu and his associates. And yet his philosophy is all jumbled up.
But it's not jumbled up in the sense of inconsistent. It's consistent. And probably 90% of the worshippers of Lord Jagannath think that ultimately Jagannath is Nirgun Brahman and he's Sagun Brahman. Means Brahman with qualities, but higher than that is Brahman without qualities. So this is because we can't understand Brahman, the actual truth, so he kindly takes a form for us to understand. But it's like when you're climbing a wall, you need a ladder. But as soon as you're at the top of the wall, you just kick away the ladder, you don't need it anymore. And Sripad Shankaracharya established one of his oldest institutions, mats in Jagannath Puri, called Govardhan Mat also. So anything is possible. By the power of the illusory energy, any belief system is possible. But that's why when the impersonalists worship the deities, it can't be bhakti because they're not really devoted to the deity. They're using the deity as a way to get something else. So there's no love when you use something as a way to get something else. Like people have work, their jobs, but they don't love their job because the only interest in the job is so that they get some money. So it's not love of job, it's love of money. It sounds like there are mice back there. Yes. Sasha.
Isn't that in South India? Is a follower of Servites, and then the follower of Mangalacharya, while doing the Mangalacharya's presence, regarding the particular temple over there, very historical temple, there was a big argument, Tanka understanding. It went for continuously for 14 to 15 days. Still they could not come to the conclusion about the Vaishnavism is right, Sarvite is right. And they just stopped.
So where is this? What temple?
South India, one of the temple, very well-known historical temple, I think Raghunatham or somewhere. And they could not come to the conclusion even then after. So point is, for the argument, different people have different sentiments, and they all right in their way, very considerably right. But when you get into that system, you already set yourself that you are this. No matter how much you try to explain, it's what really happens, but actually the fact remains the facts. Krishna enjoys, everybody just watches on him, and nothing really happens.
The arguments will be inconclusive for that reason. Therefore it is said that, what is it, Tarkapatishta, what is the rest of that, Vinyana Sunya, that the argument will be inconclusive, well, to find the truth, but the real truth is hidden in the hearts of the devotees, the Mahajanas, the devotees. So very frustrating for the exalted devotees to see this. And then the innocent people just go along with what the current trends are and what their association is. So we see that nowadays, almost everyone, even the religious people of the world, they're all impersonalists. And the whole alternative New Age type of scene, it's all impersonalism. And even, they take to kirtan, but their idea is impersonalism. It's just so widespread. So Prabhupada, Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashkati Desha Tarane. So he was very much, as was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami, they're very strong in their arguments against. They took it very personally too, as I said, not something theoretical. Did you want to?
I wanted to ask why Maya is so strong, why to create such a strong energy which can, so the illusion is so strong and people can believe in so many diverse beliefs.
So your suggestion would be what? To make it easier to get out of the prison? But Prabhupada sometimes answered that question, not always, but he sometimes answered that question, why is Maya so strong? And he said, Maya is not strong, you are weak. In other words, if you don't want to play in the land of the illusory energy, you could get out just like that. Just like that. But the problem is we want to get out, but we want to play also. So because we're mixed, we think Maya is strong. It's sort of, what is that like? Like the monkey who puts his. That's how they trap monkeys. Or we've heard that they put a jar with some food in it, with a thin neck. The jar has a thin neck, so the monkey can get his hand in the jar, but once he holds the food, he can't get his hand out. And he won't let go of the food, so he can't get his hand out, and he gets trapped by what? By his own attachment. Did you get that one? Did you get that one? How about you? Okay, we'll do it again. There's a monkey, right? Got that part? There's a jar, and the jar has a thin neck. And the monkey puts his hand in the jar, and there's some food, like say an apple, at the bottom of the jar. So he holds the apple, and then because he's holding the apple, he can't get his hand out, because the jar is thin, right? So he thinks it's the jar that has caught him. But if he would let go of the apple, then he can get his hand out. Clear? Yeah. So the point is that Maya keeps us because of our attachments to wanting to enjoy ourselves in the land of Maya. And if we gave those up, then Maya would lose its grip.
It's not possible to be attached to illusion though, is it? Or is it just purely because of association of false ego with illusion?
Yeah, good, very interesting point. That how can, but because of false ego is our false sense of who we actually are. So our real sense of who we are is we're Krishna's servant. But a false sense of who we are is that we want to enjoy ourselves in this world, and the things of this world are meant for my pleasure. That's the false sense of who we are. So, although it's not possible for the eternal soul to get attached to interact with illusion because of false ego, false sense of who he is, then the power of Maya is enforced upon him. It's because, as he said, false ego.
So is it possible to be forced to be attached?
To Maya? To the things of this world?
Attachment, I guess.
Is it possible
material illusion?
I'd say you can't help but be attached. If you don't have your real sense of who you are, you can't, because by nature the soul wants something. It's desiring, it wants. That's the nature of the soul, that's the nature in each of us. So unless we want Krishna, we have to keep wanting. So we end up wanting of the material world. It's that the true desire is reflected into the world of matter. The true desire of the soul reflected by the power of false ego and Maya interacting. Any last question? Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Srila Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami ki jai, Sri Nitai Gauranga Nityananda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai.